Hello, I'm Isabel Boyd and I'm delighted to talk to you today about a chapter from the Child's Bible. I'm a recently retired teacher, head teacher and director of education, but since retiring from full-time work, I still do work in education and I work with teachers and leaders across Scotland and in other countries about developing their leadership, particularly using their courage. And that may be useful for us today when we look at this particular chapter from the Child's Bible where Jeremiah warns of God's punishment. It's not an easy read, it's not an easy listen, but let's listen carefully and then see what we can take from today's reading into our lives. The people who kept the covenant with God were not numerous. Their troops were no match for the armies of the mighty nations. They could not prevent the Assyrians from occupying the land and driving many people out of their own homes into foreign lands. Those who were believers recognised God's punishment in this misfortune, just as he had warned through his prophets. In Jerusalem, Jeremiah warned the people, "For 23 years now I have been God's prophet. I have passed on to you all that he has said, but you will not listen. I said, be converted from your wrongful ways. Stop doing evil, and you will remain in the land which God has given to you, fathers, and to you forever. But you have not listened to me. And so the Lord has said, I will allow the nations of the north to invade. I will make Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, my instrument. I will make him fall upon you and your neighbours. He will devastate your land. You will serve the king of Babylon." And so it happened. Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem with his army. Soon there was no more bread to be had in the city. The famine became extreme. Then the Babylonians made a breach in the wall of Jerusalem. They forced their way into the city, burned down the temple, the king's palace, and the big houses. The walls of Jerusalem were torn down. The sacred vessels of the temple were taken as booty by the Babylonians. All the important people, the craftsmen too, were forced into exile in Babylon. Only the poor people, the peasants and the vine growers, were allowed to stay behind in their homeland. Well, that's quite a story, isn't it? You could just imagine that. Lots of violence and threats and misery and concern around the people. But I don't think that's what the message of that story is. When I spoke to you at the beginning, I spoke about my jobs, but as well as being, that person working with teachers or director of education, I've been a teacher in a classroom and I've also a mum. I want you to think about your teachers and think about your mum, your dad, your gran, the people who look after you. Have you heard them say, "Don't do that, you're not listening to me"? And then comes the consequences. Get your room tidied. If you don't tidy your room, you're not going out with your friends. I've asked you not to do that 3 times now. If you do that again, then I'm taking away your iPad. These are the kind of things that the people who know us, who care for us, and who love us the most help to guide and structure our lives. And that's the message of this story. It's not about a vengeful, horrible God punishing his people. It's about a message. We've heard the word covenant before in earlier chapters, about a set of rules, the doing the right thing. So when your mum or your dad or your gran or your big brother, your teacher, are asking you to do things, telling you to do things in a particular way, it's not because they don't like you. It's not because they don't love you. It's not because they want to make your life miserable. It's because they want to guide you and help you to do the right thing. And that's the message of God. God has given us a covenant. God has given us a set of rules by which we can guide our lives. We call them commandments. And by following God's rules, God's way of life, then we become better people, better individuals, and better friends, neighbours, and families. So that's what I've taken from today's reading, and I think it'd be useful for you to have a chat about it with your teacher and with members of your family. I've enjoyed talking to you today, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Bye.